Welcome to Talks with Tracy, with certified hypnotherapist, life coach, and licensed mental health professional, Tracy Claremont. Tracy will share her healing journey and explore the many meaningful alternative healing methods in our world today that will support you in doing your own deepest emotional healing. So please welcome the host of Talks with Tracy, Tracy Claremont. Let the suffering end and the healing begin.
Hello and welcome to Talks with Tracy. I am your host, Tracy Claremont, coming to you on the Bold, Brave Television Network. Thank you so much for joining me today. And thank you, as always, to Bold, Brave Television Network for having me and giving me this beautiful opportunity to be here with all of you. So here on Talks with Tracy, we have had many guests who have shared their story in emotional healing, sharing their suffering all the way through to the healing and how it feels after the healing has happened. And I am so very thankful to each and every one of those people. I myself have shared my own story and been sharing all along the way as guests are appearing, and it's just a wonderful experience. I really appreciate it. So it really is an exercise in vulnerability, right? It's when you're sharing your own story, you're being very vulnerable, and I call it getting naked emotionally, right? Yeah. So, but this sharing is all done in the interest of joining in sameness and finding connection and inspiring others, being a demonstration of what it looks like to do the deep dive into your emotional experience and to do the healing. This is an uncomfortable place to be. It's an uncomfortable space to be in, but it's in that discomfort that true healing happens. So going to that uncomfortable place is essential for our healing. So I want to encourage people to do that. So now last week on Talks with Tracy number 14, I had the pleasure of sharing my husband's story. And, this was actually a hard thing for me to do because I love him, right? And I had to go to that place of discomfort with him, going into his childhood, talking about his experience in his adulthood. And quite honestly, there were many heartbreaking things to talk about in sharing his story. And that was hard for me. In fact, when I was preparing for it at home, I'd be sitting at the kitchen table and I'd be typing up, writing things up for me to present it in a good way. And all of a sudden I'd start crying because it was just so sad and heartbreaking. And my husband would come in and he'd see me crying, and he'd say the same thing each time. He'd say, "It's okay, babe. It has a happy ending." And what he meant by that happy ending was, what it feels like to be on the other side of emotional healing. It's a place of relief and fulfillment and joy. It's not free of all challenges. That's not a realistic depiction of life. There's going to be challenges for sure. But once you do that healing and you heal that core belief and you get to that place of enoughness and worthiness and confidence, that birthright of self-confidence, when you regain that, all challenges that come up in the future are much easier to manage, right? They're much easier to handle, and you can handle them with ease and grace in a much better way than you can handle them when you haven't done the healing. So in sharing his story, obviously from the male perspective, it made me start to wonder about the male experience in healing. I know what it feels like to be a woman and do healing because I am a woman. But I don't want to make assumptions about what it feels like for a man to do healing. And as a woman, we are known to be allowed to be feeling emotional beings, and we have the luxury of being feeling emotional beings. And I say that luxury loosely, because it can also be a disservice to us, right? If people see us as emotionally irrational or unstable at times. That's not the case, but I do think there's more benefits than more pros than cons to it, because we're allowed to, by our society as women, to express and to process emotions and to feel. And we kind of have a free pass in our society to do that men don't have. We're allowed to nurture and be nurtured. So I could, as a female, talk about the male experience and make all sorts of assumptions, but I'd rather hear it straight from the source. So I set my intention, and the universe provided. Today I have a very special guest. His name is Josh Dodds, and he is a man who is willing to share his experience in healing, which of course includes a backstory of suffering to get to the healing. And he is fearless, and he is here and willing to share. And I'm so excited about hearing his story. I'm so excited to hear his story, and I'm so thankful for his willingness to share. So let's get right to it. Please join me in welcoming my very special guest, Josh Dodds.
Thanks,
Hi,
Tracy.
Josh. Yeah,
Hi.
great to see you. Thank you so much for being here today. I know you just got off work, and now you're here on a podcast. So thank you for doing that for me. I really appreciate that. So I'm super excited to hear all about your healing journey and hear your backstory. And I said that I don't want to make assumptions as a woman about the male experience, but I guess I'm going to kind of start straight off the bat with an assumption that, given our society's beliefs and structure when it comes to males versus females in terms of emotion, I would guess it's a harder thing for a man to even do emotional healing. Would you agree?
Yeah, I mean, I think culturally we're not really encouraged to to feel deeply our emotions or to be well versed in expressing what we're feeling and communicating that
Mm.
to our partners or to friends or you know in our workplace. I think very difficult for most men to know what they're feeling and then additionally to communicate what they're feeling.
Right, because we don't come into this world knowing how to express and knowing how to talk about feelings, right? In fact, that's the very reason I told my husband's story, because um, he said, I don't I you can share anything you want to about me, but I don't know how to say it. And he was talking about just exactly that, right? Difficulty in putting it to words and expressing, because he wasn't ever taught that. So what would you say men and boys are taught instead?
Um, in general, I would say they're taught to so-called toughen up, to
Mm,
to take it, to endure the suffering that comes from being conditioned in the common way of manhood in our culture, and to never complain, to never show weakness, to be, I guess you would call it, stoic, to suffer
mm,
and to um, internalize whatever your suffering might be, but to get up and go to work and do the things you're expected to do, to never let it show, essentially.
right, exactly. To stuff it down and tough it out, right?
Yeah, or you go and drink with your buddies and complain about life, or there are socially accepted outlets for the emotional suffering of men, but we don't we don't directly say that it's a way to express emotion. It's like sports or drinking, or these ways that ultimately aren't getting to the source of what the issue might be.
Right. Maybe just kind of putting a band-aid on it and distracting from it rather than really getting into a discussion about it.
Yeah, I think many men lack a network. They lack close friends that they can really share honestly what's going on in their lives.
Right. Yeah. One time my son, he was going through a breakup with a woman that he'd been with for many years, right? And he was doing what you're saying is socially accepted. He was at the bar, he was having drinks with his friend, and he started to talk about his emotions, and his friend, it was his best friend, and it was funny because his friend kind of stopped him and he said, "Hey, maybe we should do this over coffee in the morning when we're not drinking." and and then they did that over coffee in the morning when they weren't drinking, so that they could really actually talk about feelings and connect. And I was super happy that they had that kind of friendship, and knowing that sitting at the bar, over drinks, with lots of people and distraction around you, isn't necessarily a healthy means of getting real connection and support, right? But you're right, it's a very common thing for men to do. Is what men have been conditioned to do.
Yeah, it's like what's acceptable given the lack of resources that most men have in that way of not having a network of close friends that they can really be honest with, that will help to hold them accountable if they're not, if they say they want to make shifts in their life but they're not making any actions in that direction. Then a good friend might be like, oh hey, you remember this shift that you want to make in your life? Like, do you feel like you're doing your best in that regard?
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. Accountable. That's a great thing to help somebody with, and to do it in a meaningful way where the person doesn't feel judged, right? You're just kind of being there for them and talking things through with them. There's
Yeah.
a lot to be said with just being with somebody and receiving somebody's thoughts and emotions and feelings. And again, um, I believe men aren't really taught to sit and receive. I mean, we see it all the time in relationships with women, right? When a woman is expressing and talking about feelings and whatnot. I know that at different times, have gotten like a deer in the headlights look from my husband when
Right.
I am talking about something. So I have actually, I help him in that, and I will tell him if it is a just listen to me moment, or if I'd like advice, because I think men kind of jump to the advice, don't they?
Yeah, I was just talking to Ash about this the other day. Like in a moment, she was kind of having a difficult moment, and I sort of, in my way, I did that, and then I realized, like, yeah, actually mastering the skill of not offering your woman advice when she's having a hard time, if it's unsolicited, like that's a real Jedi skill for men to learn to just be there, just be a present, and let your woman express whatever she needs to express, and don't take any of it personally.
Right, exactly. And, of course, you want your partner to be mindful of your thoughts and feelings in the process, right? It needs to be a mutual respect. But I like that Jedi reference. That's good.
uh, it's just a that men struggle with. I think in general we are conditioned to offer solutions, to do the solutioneering thing, which is like, oh, you have a problem, well, have you tried this, have you tried that, rather than
Mhm.
really just learning the art of holding space while your female partner, if you're a man, expresses what is going on for her without needing to solve that problem.
Right. I love that. I love that way of saying it too, holding space, because that's exactly what we often need in those kind of situations. So I love that reference of holding space, and I also call it being with. So I'll say,
Yeah.
this is just a being with moment. I don't need anything but you to hear me and listen, and just let me talk. And so sometimes well, not sometimes, I actually have kind of trained him in that art of receiving emotion, and I think it's been helpful because he means well. He really does mean well, and he wants to meet my needs, but he hasn't been taught. So, so Josh, we are already at the end of our first segment. It just flies by. So it's already time to take a commercial break. I would love to hear, Josh, when we come back, your own personal story to share your backstory, your struggles, so that we can get to ways that you have done healing. And if you could do that when we come back, I would be so grateful. All right. All right. So you're watching Talks with Tracy on Bold Brave Television Network. We will be right back in a couple of minutes.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation. Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy with me, Tracy Claremont, coming to you on the Bold Brave Television Network. I have the great privilege of talking with Josh Dodds today, and he is sharing his experience in healing. And we were just talking about the difficulties that men have in regard to sharing emotional experiences in our society when they've been conditioned to stuff things down and not talk about things their whole life. They haven't been supported in that or trained or taught. And we were talking about some of those difficulties. And so thank you, Josh, for having the courage and being fearless and sharing with us today, willing to share your experience. It really means a lot to me, and I know it's going to be helpful to viewers. So often our emotional wounds are injuries that we carry with us. They come from us way back. They start in our childhood. I'd love to hear your backstory, your own personal story. Can you share that with us?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I grew up pretty rough in a pretty chaotic and emotionally traumatic environment. My mother was a single mother, probably around 23 years old with 3 kids under 5 years old. And this culture is not very kind to single mothers. And this would have been in the late 70s. So my mom found, a variety of men to bring into our lives to try to help her with the day-to-day expenses. So Bob was my stepfather. He was around the longest, pretty much from, 5 years old till I left home at 17. And yeah, there was a lot of psychological abuse. Bob was carrying his own traumas from his own relationship with his father and his own troubled childhood, and served time in Vietnam, and that war messed a lot of men up. I mean, war in general messes a lot of men up, and when they come back to society and they try to take on the duties and responsibilities of raising a family, often they're passing that trauma on. So yeah, I think Bob was struggling. he found some value in taking on children that really weren't his own biological children, but that was a meaningful thing for him. And a thought that's come to me, you know, in all my suffering that I endured at the hands of Bob is like, he also went to work every day and supported children that were really not his children. Um,
Mm.
I have to acknowledge that. I mean, on top of the suffering that he handed to us, he also fed us and he also
Mm.
paid, and, you know, he didn't really have to do that. So,
Yeah.
um, yeah, I mean, that doesn't excuse the behavior, but I just wanted to acknowledge that too. Bob is, he's dead now some years. And
Oh.
yeah, after all that, really, when I heard that he had died, because it had, I mean, it had been a few years after he died until I heard. And I guess the thought that came to me was more a thought of compassion. Like, I bet he died alone.
Mm.
I bet there was no one really
Oh.
there with them to comfort him in that moment. And just
Mm.
like a moment of clarity, I guess you might call it, a looking back through the generations and just seeing all the suffering and all the emotional pain and how that's handed down, you know, from man to man to man until
Absolutely.
someone decides like, okay, I'm gonna be the one to take responsibility for this as much as I can.
Right, absolutely. You know, so often the shame that we experience ourselves is actually taken on. It's the shame of our caretakers, right? It's passed down just exactly like you're saying. It's passed down through the generations, and it's not even our shame to carry, but we take it on. It's so familiar to us by way of being raised by our caretakers that we take it on as our own, and until somebody decides to change that, right? To do the healing and not pass it along. I think that's a great point.
Yeah, trying to, you know, there was some physical stuff, but mainly Bob's MO was psychological, which is almost more impactful in a way because it gets into your
Mm-hmm.
head, like establishes the way that you relate with the world and the way that you behave in relationship with others. And
Mm-hmm.
yeah, it's been a long
Yeah,
road.
it impacts our belief about ourself, right?
Yeah, right. I
Yeah.
mean, that's why I relate pretty, it resonates deeply for me, your husband's story of the like, I'm a piece of shit or the not good enough
Mm-hmm.
theme, which
Mm-hmm.
resonates with a lot of men, you know, and feeling like they're not
Mm-hmm.
enough, they're not a good enough provider, they're not handsome enough, they're not strong enough, they're not whatever. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
women have their own things like that too that are specific to what it is to be a woman in this culture, but
Mm-hmm.
men certainly have their complexes or insecurities or yeah, guilt. Absolutely.
Absolutely, and so much of the male experience is achievement based, right? And even as a kid, you growing up, I know when we talked about this before we came on today, you were talking about how you really took on a lot of responsibilities that weren't even adult responsibilities, and then was always left with a feeling of not doing it well enough when it wasn't even your responsibilities. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I was actually just reading about avoidant attachment style, and it's common for people that have avoidant attachment style as adults to have been, you know, given a lot of responsibility early on. Like for some reason, a parent left and they took on, you know, childcare duties. And that's, in my case, it
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that there was a parent gone. It was just, yeah, it was just, God, what would you say? I was recruited into service as a young teen, caretaking my brother who is 14 years younger than me, so he was born when I was a freshman in high school. So caretaking a toddler, grocery shopping for family, doing laundry. I mean, a huge amount of laundry for an entire family. uh,
Mm-hmm.
I would I would be kept out of school and go to work with my stepfather and then charged rent to be, in a way,
Oh,
like I
wow.
needed to get financial contribution.
Hmm. Mm-hmm.
So yeah, all of that was
kind of
Sorry, it looks
froze
like the
up for
signal.
a moment. Yeah. Just wait
Okay,
a
is it
couple
still there?
moments. Oh, yeah. It's a little bit choppy. Are you there? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear
Okay.
you.
Okay, yep, I can hear you. The
Okay.
picture is freezing a little bit, but I can hear your voice just fine. Yeah,
Okay.
so you kind of took on the responsibility, and we're in the midst of some chaos, sounds like, and
Yeah.
some yeah, very difficult situations. And so so what did you do as you grew older? Like, how did you stay in that situation? Did you figure out a way out?
Well, I ended up joining the Marines when I was 17 years old, specifically
Okay.
as a means of removing myself from my home situation.
Oh, okay. So as an escape.
Yeah,
Very wise.
absolutely.
Okay. So tell me about your time in the Marines. How did that go for you?
I mean, at first I sort of was like a model, what you might call a model Marine. But then I started getting involved in the realm of psychedelics, and that sort of
Mm.
blew my mind open in a way which made it very difficult for me um, to get along in the day to day in the military.
Okay, so you're saying when you were in the Marines, you were introduced to the world of like LSD and things like that?
Yes, LSD
Okay.
specifically. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so tell me about how that went for you if you got involved with substances when you were in the Marines.
Well, it was okay at first. It was sort of a weekend thing, but I did end up. I got stationed in Japan, and then while I was there, I got caught with a quantity of LSD, and so I wound up in a sting
Mm.
operation and ended up actually doing some time in Japanese prison.
Oh wow. Wow.
Yeah,
So that is an experience in itself, right? Being in
yeah,
a Japanese
it's
prison.
yeah. It wasn't as bad as
Huh.
it's.
It wasn't as bad as it sounds.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, good. I'm glad for you. It sounds a little frightening to me. But so you did the time in the Japanese prison, and then once you were done with that, I assume that they shipped you back to the States.
Yes, that's right. They sent me back to Camp Pendleton in California.
Okay. And then you were discharged as a is that what how that works? You were discharged then?
Yeah, they processed me out after that after that time. Yeah.
Okay, and then did you continue on with your use of LSD and this opening of your mind as you described it, and kind of continued on in
I did.
that vein?
I did continue for a while, not necessarily in a very thoughtful or intentional way. These
Hmm.
days, my relationship with psychedelics is a more infrequent and thoughtful endeavor with
Hmm.
like psilocybin or not not too much LSD, very infrequently with the LSD, but psilocybin I think in small doses for me has been helpful.
Okay, and helpful in what way?
Um, just sort of like clearing blockages or clarifying ideas or inspiring,
Hmm.
helping me to, I might go on a long walk and just take a little microdose of psilocybin. And for me, that's helpful if
Hmm.
I'm dealing with something or having trouble finding my way through something. It's sort of, I don't know, it sort of like brings up maybe some innate wisdom that is already in me, but it helps me to access that.
Right. Yeah. So I've definitely heard of that being very, very helpful with the microdosing and whatnot, which is a lot different than using it as the like for the purpose of partying and
Yeah.
whatnot. And sometimes people kind of gravitate towards substance use and groups of people who use substances as a means of trying to find some kind of connection. Do you think that was a thing for you at all? Were you
Yeah.
looking for connection?
Because my psychedelic use in the earlier years when I was involved in it was tied up into the rave scene. So like big, huge
Oh,
electronic
okay.
parties, lots of people together. So it was totally it was like an unconscious seeking after like a tribal, experience for sure.
Okay. So seeking connection is a positive, healthy thing, but when you use substances as the means to doing that, sometimes it can get out of control and out of hand, right? And then you can have consequences like you're talking about. So then it's unhelpful.
Yeah.
Is that correct? Yeah.
I
It
think
turns.
it's about taking care and balance, and yeah, it's like anything. When you approach anything with a lack of awareness or consciousness, then the results may be unfavorable.
Correct. I like how you put that. So typically, when people reach a moment of kind of awakening or being broken open, it's usually like a low point that causes them, like they come to a crossroads where they're feeling suffering and they're not feeling successful, and they have a choice. They can stay in the suffering or they can do the healing. So when we come back from the commercial break, I'd love to hear like what was that moment like for you, or what prompted you to move into the healing process, and then how did you know, like where did you start and how did you do it? I'd love to hear that when we come back from our commercial break. Is that good?
Sure.
Okay, great. Well, you're watching Talks with Tracy on Bold Brave Television Network. We will be right back after the break.
Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality? But it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating. Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Are you struggling to care for elderly parents or a spouse? Do you wonder if being a caregiver is making you sick? Are you worried about taking time off work to care for elderly parents and balance work, life, and caregiving? Has caregiving become exhausting and emotionally draining? Are you an aging adult who wants to remain independent, but you're not sure how? I'm Pamela D. Wilson. Join me for the Caring Generation radio show for caregivers and aging adults, Wednesday evenings, 6 Pacific, 7 Mountain, 8 Central, and 9 Eastern, where I answer these questions and share tips for managing stress, family relationships, health, well-being, and more. Podcasts and transcripts of the Caring Generation are on my website, PamelaDWilson.com, plus my caregiving library, online caregiver support programs, and programs for corporations interested in supporting working caregivers. Help, hope, and support for caregivers is here on the Caring Generation and PamelaDWilson.com.
What if there were a super tiny device that could diagnose the brain and is smaller than a single human hair? What if you could see inside the brain to help an epilepsy patient during surgery or to help the fight against Parkinson's disease? Dr. Patricia Broderick is proud to announce the Broderick Probe, a biomedical and electronic breakthrough. Imagine a probe to help with the understanding and potential cure of brain-related diseases. To learn more, listen live to the Easy Sense radio show with host Dr. Broderick, Wednesdays 7 p.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave Media Network and TuneIn Radio. And to help support the Broderick Foundation, please go to Easy EasySense.com and learn how, with your help, we can fight these horrific brain disorders. That's EasySense.com to learn more and help support the Broderick Foundation.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy on Bold Brave Television Network. We are here today visiting with Josh Dodds, who has been doing a beautiful job of just sharing his experience as a man in the world with his emotional experience. And I really appreciate that. In the last segment, Josh, you shared about your childhood and your going into your adulthood, and just some of your own experience with feelings that you developed, emotions, beliefs about yourself that you developed that were the result of adversity and challenge. And I would call that a lifetime of learning those life lessons, and most often learned in the most difficult of ways. So typically, as I was saying at the end of our last segment, typically a person reaches a moment where they feel like enough is enough, that they want to put an end to the suffering. They want to move into the healing, and it usually comes as some people say a breaking point. I say more broken open point. And you did mention that with the use of LSD, your mind was expanded and opened up to other things. But what was that moment like for you when you really decided a change needed to happen?
I think it was after my last partnership ended. Um,
Okay.
there was a lot grief around that, and
Mm.
just sort of a space of like wanting to take a deep review of my life, like what, just sort of asking myself, like, what in the hell is going on here? What are you
Mm.
repetitive patterns and cycles that um, would be good to take a look at and start to move in the direction of um, finding some healing in that. So that
Right.
was like,
Yeah.
I
So
don't know, 2 or 3 years ago.
okay. Yeah. So you reached a point where you really started asking yourself, what is happening here, and really saw the need to self-reflect and look at those patterns that were repeating themselves and go to the source of those patterns. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was looking for some program, some, you know, counseling, something. I didn't really know where to go or what to do. Um, but I knew I needed to take some action. I'm trying with the signal. It looks like it's still pretty choppy. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. Yep. Looks like you're outside now, huh?
Okay. The video is, there's not much I can do about the video being choppy, but
Yep. That's fine.
yeah,
We can
I
hear
just need,
you.
I, okay. I knew I needed to take steps, whatever that looks like. And I got into counseling. Um, I just chose like online counseling because for a lot of people, a lot of men in your community, it can be really challenging to get into counseling, like in-person counseling. There's often a long wait list, unless
Mm.
you're in like severe mental crisis. I got lucky. I found a men's program that was an 8-week intensive men's
Oh,
program where we met once a week for 3 hour Zoom call. And that was huge for me. Just having that
oh,
space
wow.
to honestly share what was going on in my life with other men who were there for the same purpose.
Oh, wow. So that's amazing. That's that connecting in sameness that we were talking about, right? Kind of finding
Yeah.
your tribe.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's the missing piece for men is having other men that can honestly hear what you're really going through in your life or what you're struggling with and offer you reflection that's not advice based, that can just sort of say,
Mhm.
oh hey, and what you just shared, I really resonate with this part of it, or it's okay, like other people have that experience too. It's not, you're not some mutant monster man that is the horrible person and that you can never heal. Like that's a serious story that a lot of men carry.
Yeah, a story. I like the way you use the word story because it's really a story about ourselves that moves us forward based on, emotion attached to that story, that core belief, that story about who we are and whether or not we're good enough, what we have to offer. So really it's a matter of changing that story.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And often there's more
Yeah.
than one story about how we're not good enough or we're going to fail in relationship or we can't do the things that we envision in our lives. Like there's many interlocking stories that keep us trapped in a way of being that is not good for us. It's not living out our best potential. But I understand how men get stuck there and start
Mhm.
fulfilling that prophecy of how horrible they are.
Mm. Right. So they have their story, the interlocking stories, right? And then they bring it to fruition. They make it their reality, and that's
Yeah.
why I always talk about how the words that we use in our own heads and the pictures that we paint in our imagination, they really are what our minds use to create our reality.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, so you were able to bring your awareness to your own words that you would use about yourself in the context of this men's group.
Yeah. Yeah, I would share just like really deep stories that I've been holding about myself or like deep self-doubt in my capacities to shift anything. And they were able to like hold me in that, and the mentor was like, would do coaching and moments during the when you had each man had an opportunity to share, and if something in your share caught his attention, he might interrupt you and offer a moment of coaching. And so he was just offering me like some coaching on language, on the ways that we use language with ourselves, and how it can be beneficial to maybe say it like, oh, I have done these things, I have been dishonest, or I have struggled to succeed at what I envisioned for my life, but going forward, I'm making these changes. It's like just a small change in how we speak about ourselves can have profound impact.
Absolutely, and it's making that shift from this is how I was, how I used to be, this is how I am now. This is what I used to believe about myself. This is what I believe now. And it's important to have that awareness of what those automatic thoughts about ourselves are, right? So that
Yeah.
we can recognize them and then we can catch them. On the show I did last week, I talked about Brene Brown's concept of a shitty first draft, right? And that's when we have an experience and our mind interprets it based on our past experiences. And often the interpretation is not accurate, right? And then we react based on that interpretation. And just having the awareness that automatic process of our brain trying to interpret, just knowing that that's not always accurate and kind of catching it when it happens so that we
Yeah.
can so that we can change the words in our mind and recognize like, oh, that's me, that's me acting on these old beliefs, and that's not me now. That's this is who I am, and changing the story.
Yeah.
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 So those are things when when we're in relationship, that's a real place to practice those things, right? When we're in intimate relationship, because a lot of
Yeah.
times if we have feelings of not enoughness or not good enough, they can really be triggered quickly in intimate relationship. Like our insecurities can be triggered, and
Yeah.
realizing that, oh, this is about me, this isn't about her or him, this is about me and how I'm feeling, that isn't even really happening. That is a skill that is super useful and you know, can contribute to a successful relationship. Have you had like experiences like that?
Oh yeah, moments of of being self-aware in relationship, yeah. And I've also had moments of, projecting my own stories or fears onto a partner and recognizing that later. And yeah, I think there's no magic formula to healing through these things. I think it's just being willing to be self-aware, being willing to like
Mm-hmm.
take a deep inventory of your life, like
Mm-hmm.
what cycles keep repeating themselves, and really just having the willingness to get to the bottom of it, but to treat yourself with compassion and kindness as you would anyone else
Mm-hmm.
that you're offering um, awareness and attention and space to, like to offer that to yourself too. Don't beat yourself up. I
Absolutely.
had to learn that the hard way, and I've been extremely hard on myself through the years in this process, and I can say from where I'm standing now that wasn't really very helpful.
Awesome. Well, that is a great recommendation. So it's already time to take another commercial break. But when we come back, I would love to hear any other recommendations you have for people who are thinking about or in the process of doing this emotional healing. So when we come back, if you could share some words of wisdom and recommendations, that would be much appreciated.
Yeah, be happy to.
Okay, thank you. So you're watching Talks with Tracy on Bold Brave Television Network. We'll be right back in a couple of minutes.
Author, radio show host, and coach John M. Hawkins reveals strategies to help gain perspective, build confidence, find clarity, achieve goals. John M. Hawkins' new book, Coached to Greatness, Unlock Your Full Potential with Limitless Growth, published by iUniverse. Hawkins reveals strategies to help readers accomplish more. He believes the book can coach them to greatness. Hawkins says that the best athletes get to the top of their sport with the help of coaches, mentors, and others. He shares guidance that helps readers reflect on what motivates them, rediscover and assess their core values, philosophies, and competencies, find settings that allow them to be the most productive, and track their progress towards accomplishing goals. Listen to John Hawkins' My Strategy, Saturdays, 1 p.m. Eastern on the BBM Global Network and TuneIn Radio. Did you know that your beliefs create your entire reality, but it's the subconscious beliefs that do most of the creating? Belief shifter and life coach Shiraz can help you identify those limiting beliefs and eliminate them, often in a single session.
Like it was almost instant, like I had relief right away.
Creating better health, relationships, careers, and finances. Let Shiraz help you step out of safety and into awareness.
Definitely something's happening. It's like a flow inside. It feels good.
Whether in person or online, Shiraz provides personal coaching, belief shifting. Visit Shiraz at energeticmagic.com or call 416-529-7429. Energetic Magic on the BBM Global Network, Tuesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Find your greater happiness. Be well. Be aware. Be magical.
Welcome back to Talks with Tracy, coming to you on Bold Brave Television Network. I am here with Josh Dodds today, and I am so thankful to have had you here as a guest. You've done such a beautiful job of sharing your story and being vulnerable and sharing in such a meaningful way the male perspective on healing. And you've really given us a great demonstration of what it looks like and how it can be done. And it's been truly inspirational, and we're sharing all for the purpose of inspiring others to do the healing. In our last segment, Josh, you were talking about how you started, and you really described starting just by making a conscious choice to simplify your life and kind of downsize and self-reflect and go to a quieter place. And you found a group of men, a men's group, through counseling that you could really join in sameness and gain male support through, which all is so beautiful, and I'm so thankful that you have that core group of men that you can turn to. So, what would you recommend to others who are wanting to do emotional healing and are looking to kind of dive into their emotions, especially men? How do they start?
I would say try to find, one good comrade that you can start with, that you can share your deepest heart with, without fear of judgment. The statistics are not great for young men. There's a huge percentage, I don't know, beyond, I think it's more than 25%, that don't even have one close friend that they can share their heart with. And that's not
Wow.
good.
Mm-mm.
Seek out counseling, whatever that looks like. If you don't have monetary means, like go through the county resources where you live. Like, I think counseling can be a real starting place. And I think there's a lot of resistance that comes up for men in this, like, oh, there's nothing wrong with me, or oh, there's nothing to do, or oh, I'm fine, I'll just keep doing the things that are numbing out that hurt. But I think
Mm.
if there's one step to make to begin with, it's like, do some counseling. Go somewhere where you're paying a person to hold space for you, and who has experience and sort of offering guidance, and what you have to share, like really deeply share what's coming up for you. I
Beautiful.
think it's hard to know. That's where people get stuck. It's hard to know where to start. So I think counseling is a good
Mm-hmm.
start. I think you know, spend some time with yourself. Go on long walks. If you have the space in your life to do that, like, take time away. Say, you know what? I'm going for a long walk, and just be with yourself. See what comes up. Pay attention. Like, people
Right.
want to people want to know how to commit to all these other things, like, but most people haven't learned how to commit to themselves. And
Oh.
just offering a little bit of time, a little bit of time, an hour a day to yourself. Journal, the counseling, journaling, some kind of way to get in touch with what's really going on inside of you. When you've been stuffing it down for many a long year, it's not going to be an easy process to start digging into the depths of that stuff. It's going to take a moment. And, like, be patient with yourself. Give yourself time. Um, be kind. You know,
Mm.
treat yourself as you would want to be treated by a supportive friend. Offer that same love and support and compassion to yourself. Don't if you
Absolutely.
if you catch yourself speaking to yourself in a way that if you did it to anyone else you would clearly call it abuse, then that's a moment to
Mm.
pause and recognize, like, something is going on there that needs your attention.
Oh, absolutely. And where is that coming from, right? Just taking the time to be aware of the words that we use and really asking, like, why am I saying that? What is my belief around that? And where did it come from? And I love your recommendation for therapy. As a mental health therapist myself, that's what we're trained to do, help people express, help people to get their emotion out. And that is what we do day in and day out. So it is a good place to start. And that is something that therapists are well versed in and can kind of train. Just like I said, I kind of trained my husband, so to speak, in regard to meeting my own emotional needs. And that there's training that can be done with the therapist as well. And quieting your mind and simplifying things. Oh, he kind of froze up. Are you there? Uh-oh. I'm not sure if we lost you, Josh. Are you there? Okay, well, I am just going to close things up then, Josh. I don't know if you can hear me. I hope you do. You've been an amazing guest, and I'm so very thankful for you. Um, we're all works in progress, right? We're all here doing the work, and we're all joining in sameness. And Josh had said that in a phone call conversation with me, he had said that he set a deep intention to walk in a different way and do that emotional healing that changes us intergenerationally, right? Breaks the cycle. And he's doing that. And I love the demonstration. I'm so glad we didn't lose him until the very end because he had such wonderful things to say. So I just want to say thank you to Josh for being fearless, being vulnerable, sharing his story today. I so appreciate that. Um, I always like to remind people that doing that deep dive inward, it is a difficult thing. However, on the other side awaits joy and peace and fulfillment, not a life without challenges, because life does have challenges, but it makes us, when we do that emotional healing, it puts us in a position to be much better able to handle those challenges as they come up. If we are operating from a core belief of enoughness and confidence, and we are good enough, then it's much easier to handle challenges, with grace and ease as they come up. So that's the benefit of emotional healing. And I love the example that Josh gave to us today. He was a beautiful demonstration. I thank him for that. And I thank all of you for watching, all of you viewers. I appreciate each and every one of you. Please join me next week, and we're going to hear another story from another amazing man who's willing to share his story of healing with us. Cody Weaving will be joining us to tell his story and provide us with another incredible example of what it looks like to be a man in this world doing the emotional healing. He'll share his experience. So all for the purpose of inspiring, joining in sameness, and really encouraging all of us to do our emotional healing. So please join me next week for that. This has been Talks with Tracy with me, Tracy Claremont, coming to you on the Bold Brave Television Network. I will see you next week.
This has been Talks with Tracy. Join us each week as Tracy and her guests will come together and realize that underneath it all, we are all the same and never alone. So join us each week and let Talks with Tracy be your safe place to land in your healing journey. Right here, Thursdays, 11 a.m. Eastern on the Bold Brave TV network.